Hi, my name is Kerry Critchlow from RCR Recording Studios, and today we're going to be continuing going over writing using emotions or emotions in your musical writing. We'll start with a couple of quotes. If you've seen the last few videos, you might, some of this is going to be review, but for those of you just joining us, hopefully that these concepts should help you to be able to think about how to approach crafting your music in a more emotional way, and we'll go over why that's important here. So Victor Hugo has said, "Music expresses that which cannot be said, and on which it is impossible to be silent." Leo Tolstoy, "Music is the shorthand of emotion." So, and there's a lot of different quotes out there. Very few people would argue that emotion is not important in music. I mean, emotion may be the most important thing when it comes to music. And so music should convey an emotion. If you want your listener to feel something, you need to give them something to feel, right? So you want to have some kind of an emotional connection to your music that you can then give your listeners. The emotion or emotions you want to convey will inform your musical choices. And these are going to be things like tempo, instrumentation, melody, dynamics, chords, and lyrics, and anything else you can think of that would be in a musical context. Emotions can be complex and nuanced or simple and straightforward, because human beings are complex at times and simple at times, and various emotions can be combined together to give more complex array of emotions, or you can simply stay on one emotion and really make your listener feel that one singular emotion. And there's no right or wrong when it comes to this, just as there are no wrong or right feelings, there's just what you feel. And then you can juxtapose emotions, and that can be a fun and useful tool when writing music. For instance, you can have a sad song with some uplifting lyrics or something along that nature, or you can have a happy song with some sadder lyrics or that kind of thing as an example. But using two kind of competing emotions, I guess, or emotions that maybe you would not think that would go together, putting them together in a way that's kind of new, sort of like peanut butter and jelly or peanut butter and chocolate or something like that, right? Taking two disparate things and putting them together in a way that creates something new and exciting. And then there's a few examples of emotions here. This is not exhaustive. There are so many out there. This list could go on and on and on and on, but just a few short examples: happiness and joy, anger and rage, fear and tension, sadness and heartbreak, love and unity, contemplation and thoughtfulness, excitement and energy, boredom and monotony, nostalgia and loss, good times and bad times, simple and complex, new and old, fun and jubilee, depression and lethargy, success and fulfillment, failure and emptiness, hope and peace, war and aggression, and on and on and on and on and on. And hopefully this list will kind of give you some starting references and maybe get your wheels spinning in your head towards something that you can express using your music. Now, a lot of this may seem very simple on its surface, or obvious maybe on its surface, and that's because most people tend to kind of think in these terms anyways if they're musicians. But today we're going to kind of go over sort of the soft sciences behind the art, and how you can add some emotional context to your music. We're going to do that by bringing up a piano here. And I use a piano just because it's a very simple and relatable instrument. And we're going to go over melodies today. Now, there are a lot of different ways that you can go about writing melodies. In their basic form, or in the simplest way to explain it, a melody is simply just a series of notes of various lengths and pitches, right? And so we're going to just go through and kind of explore that a little bit. And the key that we are going to be using today is the key of E. It's one of my favorite keys, largely because I'm a guitar player, and playing in the key of E allows for some really cool chording on a guitar. But aside from that, it's very arbitrary what key you would choose. But here are the chords, here are the notes, and then you can, of course, use these different triad and seventh formulas and things like that. We're also working in a major key. We will eventually get into minor keys, but for today, we're going to stick with a more simpler, the simplest form, which would be the whole or a major scale formula. Okay, and so if we were to write out this major scale, we have, we'll just do quarter notes to keep it simple. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, and then E. And this is a major scale. And these are the notes that you can use to create your melodies with. And the length of the note and the pitch of the note is what will change when you're creating your melodies. In the key of E, these are all the things that, all the notes that are available to you, and you can put them in different orders. So, you know, and you don't have to use every single note. You can use, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 or all 7 if you wish, or 8 technically with the octave. And so there's no real wrong or right way to go about doing this. The idea is you want to come up with a melody that feels right to you or is giving you the musical expression that you wish to convey. So if you want something that's fast and energetic, you could maybe do something that has 16th or 32nd notes, very quick succession maybe. And you can make that faster with tempo to maybe get even more energetic. So if we increase the speed. Now, that's just a kind of a climbing scale in a way that, you know, ends and starts on E, and it's just da 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 da. I mean, you hear it. And this is the kind of thing that you might use if you wanted something very energetic. If you wanted something more slow and contemplative, you can, of course, just slow down the tempo and have it be a little bit more thoughtful or a little more slow, a little bit more chill, I guess. Or you can slow it down even more. And so there are a lot, so many different ways to go about it. You can have very fast notes, or you can have very slow notes. You can start on whatever note you want. So you can have this very basic, simple kind of melody here. Okay. And so this is an example of a very, very, very basic melody, almost nursery rhyme kind of thing. Very simple. And what we're doing is we're starting on the 1 of our scale, which is an E. Then we're going up to a 5th to a B. So 1 to 5. And then we're going to a 4, which is the A. So E, B, A, 1, 5, 4 in our scale degree. Then we're doing a 1, 5, 3. Then we're doing a 1, 5, 6. And then we're doing kind of a walk down here from 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. And it's a very simple thing. We're using half notes, whole notes for the whole thing. And it has kind of a little bit of a happier feel, generally speaking, a little bit more, just, I don't know, happy. Well, using the simplest terms, we can make it faster if we want to, and it'll give it a little bit more energy. And we could, of course, slow it down again. And so this seems like somewhat of a happier melody when it's on its own. But if you wanted to, you could very easily make this seem sadder just by adding some harmony or chords underneath it. And so if we're starting our first thing, this is an E and a B. Those are both notes in a E major chord. So our 1, 3, and 5, that would be the 1 and 5 of our E. It would be a 5 in our A chord, so an A, a C sharp, and an E. So an A has an E in it, so we could use an E, we could use an A. We could use a B because there's a B, so E, D sharp, and F sharp. B, D sharp, and F sharp for our B major chord. We could use a C sharp minor because it's C sharp, E, and G sharp. And we could use a whole other plethora. So like these are all different types of chords that would conclude some of the notes that we're using in this scale. If we wanted it to sound happy, we'd probably build it an E major chord underneath our chord here. Maybe we can hold it out. This is very arbitrary here. I'm just kind of trying to give you some simple examples, but we have our E here. So. And we can have this E just go the entire way. Okay. Or we could do a different chord and make it sound a little sadder. For instance, we could try a C sharp minor. Or we can have even the chords themselves move around a little bit. Or C sharp, not a... So maybe like an A. And let's turn these chords down a little bit so that we can hear the melody a little bit better. Oop. Maybe that's a little too much. So we have a C sharp minor to an A, and then maybe to a B, or actually an E might actually be better here. And then maybe to a B here. And I'm not using any inversions right now, although I probably would if I was writing this out for real, but right now we're just using basic triads. So we have our C sharp to an A, to an E, to a B. And that gives it a little bit more of a sad feeling than we did before. And then we can have that repeat if we wanted to. Except this last chord feels maybe like it's not quite right with this B. So let's maybe look at a, well, it's on the third, a G sharp. So if we look at our thing, our scale here, we can see what chord or what chords include a G sharp. So we have our E with a third in it. We have a C sharp minor with our G sharp as the fifth. We have a G sharp minor with a G, A, B, and a D sharp. And so these are all different possibilities. Those three chords all include this G minor. So let's try maybe making this a G minor chord and see if that is sorry. And that doesn't sound right at all either. So we're ending back on our 1. So maybe this chord should have an E in it. And so maybe we'll look to put a, make this an E major again. Okay, and so we're making this an using a E sus 4 here, E major sus 4 back to E for the end here. And the suspended 4 is a 1-4-5 chord progression. And so in this E, we're just taking the third, raising it up to the fourth, and then bring it back. Okay. And so that's a way to maybe make this end in a happier tonality, if you will. You can make it sad again as well if you wanted to. You could make this, by ending this back on a more of a minor type key instead of resolving it. Not minor key, minor chord. And so our minor chords are F sharp minor, G sharp minor, C sharp minor. So we can maybe look to have this be a F sharp minor instead, if we want to try and make it a little bit more sad sounding. And it will feel unresolved. Because the this E makes it an F sharp minor 7. So we're not resolving. The only way to actually resolve it would be to make this E. So we can leave this unresolved if we want it to feel not end on such a happy note. So you can see how the different chord choices we make are going to significantly impact this chord progression that we have here, right? We could go in a happier direction if we wanted to. So instead of starting on the C sharp minor, maybe we start on an A major, and that's going to give us a bit of a happier sound. Then maybe to a B next. And then maybe here we can do a C sharp minor, and we're just kind of walking it up. And then to an E here. And so it's got a slightly more happy, less dark sort of feel to it. And then, of course, we can always add in different chord combination, or like extensions to our chord here, our basic triad. So right now, this is an A major, but if we wanted to make it A major, or an A major 7, and it's given a lot more of a color to it, right? It's not so happy as it was before. So we do all sorts of different extensions to it. To make it, to give it the emotional effect we want, right? So we don't have to stick to basic triads. We can do all sorts of stuff. It's the same melody, but the chords we're putting under it, the harmony we're putting under it, can really make a difference to what the vibe of this melody is giving us. Without any chords, it almost sounds kind of happy and peaceful and chill, or not, like, I don't know, but like it simple, more uplifting, more of the happier vibe. But when we start putting some complex chords underneath it, all of a sudden it's giving a different sort of vibe altogether. And so this is giving it a little bit more, I don't know if uncomfortability is the right word, but just it's more complex, more rich. So and now it's not quite so happy. It's got kind of like a dissonance to it, right? Yeah. And so the different types of chords you put under a melody can have a big impact on the feeling and the vibe of the melody. So we can even do different types of melodies. So just give one more pretty quick example here. Okay. Again, another relatively happy kind of melody on its own. And, you know, these are combinations of quarter notes and dotted half notes, whole notes. It's whatever you're kind of feeling, right? Like there's no wrong or right way. I wish I could give you a simple magical formula. All I can tell you is that if you use these notes, you will be okay. Like if these notes together in the key of E, if you're using these notes, anything you put down is going to sound by and large okay. You can play with where you want it to be, how long you want them to last, all that kind of stuff. But like at the end of the day, there's not really a secret formula for how to craft a perfect melody. You just kind of have to feel it out. And usually I do that by putting one note down and then another note and then listen to those two notes. And if they sound good together, then I keep going. And if not, I make a change and I keep changing things until I get it to sound roughly approximately the way I think it ought to. It's giving me the feeling, the vibe that I feel is right. There's, I wish there was a better way to explain this, but this is kind of what it is. So, all right. And so this is another relatively simple melody here. Excuse me. And then we can, you know, draw this out more if you wanted to. I guess we can. So we'll start with this basic phrase again. So we have. And then we're ending on our E. Anytime you resolve to the 1 in your scale, generally speaking, it's going to feel resolved. Anytime you don't, it might feel like it's open-ended. And so that's another way you can kind of create the various emotions. If you want it to end on something that seems open-ended, you can end it on anything that's not the 1. But if you want it to feel like it's come home, that it's resolved, then you can end it on the 1. And so these are two phrases are very similar, except that we're kind of ending, we're resolving the melody, so to speak, here by bringing it back to the E. Right. And so the beginning two phrases are the same right here. These two are exactly the same. And it's this kind of middle bit and end bit here that are slight variations on each other, right? And not by much, just a couple of notes, but it really makes a difference. And again, we can, this kind of has a more, we'll say, a more positive sort of feeling as opposed to negative. You can do sadder melodies, obviously, but a lot of the sadness from these melodies in a lot of cases is going to come from the chord choices you put underneath it. So if we start this on a major chord, say like an E, and we'll invert it just to kind of keep it together a little bit. And then maybe to a B. Oh, nope. Maybe an A. So we're going from a 1 to a 4 here. And that's given kind of a more happy vibe. And then maybe we can do another A here in the middle. And then back to the E. Oh, maybe not. Maybe this should be the B. Right. And so you can have two chords or two chords next to each other in a row. Like it doesn't, you don't have to always have it change, right? So we can keep this A going twice in a row. And then we can repeat that and just see what that sounds like. And this time we do want to come back to our E. So and here we can actually, if we wanted to, change this chord here. So maybe we make this a B. So we're walking up our chord to here. And we could probably do the same thing here. Maybe make this like a C sharp minor or something. Okay, and that's given an overall kind of happier vibe or more positive sounding vibe, right? But we can always, again, like I said, change the context of the chords or the harmony notes beneath these this melody to make it more negative sounding or sad sounding or however you want to, phrase it. So now we're starting on a C sharp minor, and then we can even go back to the A here if we wanted to. And then maybe we can go to like an F sharp minor. Okay, and so now we have a C sharp minor to an A major to an F sharp minor to a B. But we can make this chord different. Doesn't have to go to that A. Maybe we want this to be our F sharp minor here. And so it's going to another minor chord. No, F sharp minor. I'm looking at the wrong thing. And so now we're doing a C sharp minor to an F sharp minor to an A to a B. And bring this down here. Have that repeat. Okay. And so the different chords, different colorations, extensions, etc. Like there are lots of ways that you can go about making this melody happier or sadder sounding just by changing the chords that are you're using underneath it. Okay. So on its own, a melody can sound sad or happy or whatever. In a major key, the chances are, or a major mode, if you will, chances are that most melodies on their own are going to sound relatively happy. When we get into different modes or different like minor keys and things like that, the melodies will sound kind of more inherently sad, we'll say, because of the different modes you're in, and we'll get into that in more detail later. You don't have to fully understand it now, but generally speaking, most major scale melodies are going to sound more or less kind of on the happier side generally, the more positive sort of emotional side generally. That's not always the case. There are ways you can sort of make them sadder, but often that's using different modes in order to do so. But if you put like the chords you put under the melody can change the context of the melody itself and make it sound, more on the negative aspect of things if that's what you're going for. And then, of course, we'll get into the different modes later and how you can craft melodies with the different modes, but that's for a future video. For now, I hope you kind of understand the basics of how you can take a major scale and just kind of use these notes and then apply some of these chords underneath, and you can sort of see which what chords you can kind of choose from depending on what notes you're using, because they might share some similarities. Like, so if, for instance, here our melody has an E, an F sharp, and a G sharp, and a B. Well, E, G sharp, and B all have an E, are all notes that make up an E major. So an E major would be a great chord to start with here, because it's using 3 of the 4 notes that we have in our melody here. Conversely, you can use a C sharp because a C sharp has an E and a G sharp in it. So it has 2 of these 4 chords in it. And so that would be another place to start, that C sharp minor. You could also choose to do like an A or a B. A B major has the B and the E in there. Or no, not a B major. I'm sorry. B major does not have an E in it. Sorry, F sharp. That's what I meant. The B and the F sharp. So a B major might also work here if we wanted to try that. as our starting chord. So it does technically work, and you like it may not give it's not sounding the best to me, but you can start there if that's what you wanted to. So that's another way you can do it. So there are different chords that you can use underneath these melodies in order to give them different vibes, different characteristics, different whatever. And we'll get into how to craft maybe more of the negative, just because like positive, I kind of attribute to like happy, joyous, triumphant, more positive types of emotions. That doesn't mean that I'm not trying to say positive is good and negative is bad. I'm just trying to say that positive in a more uplifting, kind of more hopeful direction, negative in a more sad, depressing, kind of, just on the more negative side of the emotions, but not bad, right? Like fear, tension, the depression, lethargy, failure, empty, hopelessness. Like I'm not trying to say that one is good or bad or better or worse. I'm just trying to kind of think in the context of emotional, the emotional spectrum. Positive emotions leaning more towards happy, negative leaning more towards sad, but not better or worse. So hopefully that's clear as I'm going through this. But yeah, so that's some basic examples of how you can craft melodies and use them to create some of the emotional impact that you want, right? And you can make them way more complex, way more simple. There's no right or wrong. It really just depends on the emotion. If you want it to sound angry, you probably want something, loud and maybe brash. I don't know. The different modes will help with this. Like I said, major scales tend to lend themselves more towards positive sounding emotions, but you can use different modes and different ways of going about crafting these melodies to make them a little bit more angry sounding. right? So you make it loud, even just one pitch the whole way through. If it's loud and has a little bit of some movement to it, some rhythm to it, it's going to kind of sound a little bit more angry. Right. And then maybe a sadder. Right. That's giving a little bit more of a kind of an angry sort of feel, right? Because it's loud and kind of brash and obnoxious. And so there are different ways that you can go about creating these different emotional contexts. If you're looking for frantic, you can use very fast notes. They don't have to be quite so loud, but they'll be fast. Oh, they should be there. Right. And so you can have very fast, kind of more frantic notes here. You can go faster than that if you wanted to, but we can increase the tempo here. So, and all of a sudden, it's a very frantic feeling, right? Ended up there. And so, there's like a lot of different ways that you can go about creating these different emotions, these different feelings, and it's just kind of using the different, tricks and tips, I guess, right? So if you want fast and frantic, use fast, quick duration notes. If you want something slow and plodding, use longer held out notes. If you want something more on the sad side, you can put some minor chords underneath your melody, and that will give it just a naturally more sad feel. If you want a positive sounding kind of vibe, then use more major chords and things like that, and everything between. And like I said, we'll get into the different scales, not just the major scale. I should actually probably say major scale here instead of whole scale. But yeah, we'll get into like minor scales and things like that, and the different modes and how you can use them to craft more of like the complex emotions that you may not be able to fully get from your major scales. But major scale is a very simple scale, and you can get a lot of use out of it, right? Most modern pop music whether it has a happy or sad kind of feel, generally speaking, is using the major scale to do it. It may use like a natural minor scale as well, and we'll get into that, and what that means and stuff like that in the future. But hopefully this should give you kind of a basic context of how to start sculpting some melodies that can create some emotional context, and you can do that simply by using these notes in the key of E. Whatever key you're in, just use the notes that are within that key, and vary up the pitch and the duration of them, the different notes and how long they last, to give you the vibe you want. Don't be afraid to experiment and play around, and and work to get them to sound the way that you feel they ought to, right? That's kind of what it is. I mean, you heard me, you saw me do that kind of today, playing around and moving things to where, I thought they ought to go. And it's kind of arbitrarily, like you might have had a different, when you were hearing me work with those notes, you might have thought that different placements or different spots would have given you a better feeling. And for me, I put them where I thought they were best, right? And so there's no wrong or right here. I cannot express that enough, that it's not about wrong or right. It's about the feeling you get. And as long as you're getting the feeling you want, that's what's important. So anyways, we'll leave it there today. With that, I hope you have yourselves a wonderful day and a wonderful week, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.